to be real with God.
Be real. Right.
Because see, when judgment comes, he gonna be real with
He
me.
gonna be real with you. Yeah, right.
And the truth of the matter was I was busting hell wide open.
Come on now.
So I had to be real with myself.
That's right.
I couldn't stand in reverse judgment of the person who was judging me, but I had to use it as a life lesson to make a decision.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
This is the reason why it's hard to get people to come through the doors. Because they're running into the church in places where the church ain't supposed to be.
All right now.
But if I could just get the message out there, don't look at the man. That's their sin. And if they desire to go to hell, that's their choice. Because this is what's being taught here today.
Come on.
There will be no excuses.
There's no excuse.
They are being given the tools for survival. If they choose not to use those tools, don't let those things take you to hell because of what you see out of them.
That's right.
Seek out your own soul salvation with fear and trembling.
Hallelujah.
Don't do it or not do it because of what you see of what you call the church. God is the church. Run thee into it.
That's church.
Get your own personal relationship. Make it up in your own mind. Because see, what I had to think about in this is, they're judging me. Now I'm reverse judging them. Two wrongs don't make a right. So we both going to hell. And at the end of the day, I don't think I want to go to hell.
Come on now.
Especially not on your coattail.
Okay.
If I'm going to go because I did.
I did. Yes. I wanted to do it.
But I'm not going to let your shortcomings or the things that you have not fulfilled within your wall determine whether or not I get right with Christ.
All right.
No excuses.
No excuses.
No excuses. Verse number 3 says, and thinkest thou this, O man, that judgest them which do things and doest the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of God? Down here in our commentary, I wanted to read this. It says, most of us, this is under projection for those of you who have a book. It said, most of us can point to behavior in other people that we find sinful, even reprehensible. Ironically, we are guilty to some degree of the same sins we find so evil in others. Psychologists have a word for this. It's called projection. Our criticism of others is often an expression of the guilt we feel for our own sins.
That's right.
A guilt we find uncomfortable in acknowledging as a part of our own being. So what are we saying here? I gotta make your stuff look big so my stuff looks small. I gotta put a shine of light to everybody on what you're doing so nobody focuses on me. I'm gonna allow the maliciousness within my heart to make what you're doing be on the front screen in front of everybody else while I hide.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw the rock and hide my hand. What he's saying here is, he's saying we have to acknowledge the things that are in us.
you got to do it. Don't be honest.
You have to. Because the thing is, when you stand in projection, you stand in sin. Because see, the longer you focus on something, the more of a reality it becomes, right? So if you're always, she always doing this, she got this going on, he got this going on, blah, 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 and you spend all your time digging.
Yeah, dig it.
To find out. Girl, you ain't gonna believe what I found out. What everybody else is doing, the less time you're taking to die daily. What you're doing is you're building mess on top of mess on top of mess. And what you do is when you find out, you begin to be filled in verse 29 of chapter 1 with all unrighteousness.
Yeah.
Because see, when you open the door, when you crack the door,
Come on.
for little things, backbiting, covenant breakers. I promise God I won't go do this no more, but he know my heart. Without natural affection, I mean, I just ain't got time for it. I don't have no love for people like that. Door getting wider and wider. Why? Because all the enemy needs, you know how mice need a crack? And before you know it, at the end of the day, you got an infestation.
Amen.
Because all they needed was a crack.
Yes.
The enemy is like a rodent. There is no spine. He's a spineless creature. And all he needs is a crack.
That's right.
My God.
And guess where that crack is? A lot of times. Judgment.
Judgment. Yeah, you use that.
Judgment of others.
Yeah.
Because the more you spend in judging others in their walk, the less time you spend on reflecting on what you need to change about you.
Hallelujah.
My God.
Come on.
And before you know it, you got a plethora of things where it might have just been, you just had a little backbite you had to get rid of. You don't club, you don't do all, you think you okay. Because you don't do all the forefront sins that people can see.
Top key.
You just do the behind the scenes stuff. I used to joke and say, I'm not a judge, but I am a fruit inspector. He told me to judge them by the fruit that they bear. That ain't right either. That ain't right either. It's still judgment.
Yes. Yeah.
It's still judgment. Brother Eric.
You kind of it's a powerful lesson, you making us think of some things. And when you said, he knows my heart, it kind of, just to hear you say it, because, we all might say it, but to hear you say it, it kind of brought a light bulb or rang a bell, because what is your heart?
Exactly. Exactly. He does know your heart.
You just admitted it to yourself. So, you gotta just, I think this, I'm here, I didn't do my lesson, hard-headed boy, but I'm hearing that, it's really in the mirror thing.
It is.
We gotta look, just, the justice is in the word, I love the fact that God said, he came to fulfill the law. That didn't give us an excuse to disobey the law.
Come on now.
It gave us an excuse to accept Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, the power of prayer, and God's will for our lives.
Yes.
But like I said, it just hit me when you said, he know my heart.
Yes.
That is, maybe you need to have a clean heart, renew a right spirit.
That's my prayer, Daddy.
Because
Because it's so easy
to let yourself
to stain your heart. It's so easy for your heart. I mean, it can happen in a split second. It can happen, and it can happen so unintentionally. Let me say that. These things, some of these things that are known sin to those who are really walkers in the Word, it can happen in a split second, and it's not to say that these things are intentional.
Right.
No.
But what it is to say is that we have to do a better job of guarding our gates. Woo. We have to do a better job of what we digest. Because a lot of times we pick up things. Spirits are transferable. So we go out into the work world, or we go out into the grocery stores or in the places, and we're walking. Y'all seen the movie, what was that movie with Denzel? Where all they had to do was touch each other, and that spirit was transferred from person to person to person. A lot of times you're going through the store and somebody coming out the door, you going in, you rub up against them, oh, excuse me. You don't know what you just picked up. It's that simple. I don't know if that writer or the maker of that movie really understood what it was he was saying, but what that movie will do is it will give you an honest visual aid of what you encounter daily. If you don't guard yourself, put on your whole armor.
Glory.
Because you're out here. There are things going on out here. So some of these things that you fall prey to, and that's what it is. You fall, these are sins, these are coming from the enemy. And you fall prey to those things. Not so much always by willingness. We've covered the by willingness. There are things that we do that we just do by willingness. But there are also things that we do unwilling because we didn't guard our gates. What we watch, what we listen to, who we have conversation with, the context of the conversation. We have to be careful because then we put ourselves in placement for things to be able to creep in. And we find ourselves not even knowing that those things have begun to abide within us, have taken up residence, and we're judging other people, but not able to look in the mirror and acknowledge what it is we got going on.
All right, now.
Yes, Pastor.
While you're right there, I was listening. Also, the things can come in because you have not did your portion of seeking God in the day. If you don't get up in the morning, and if you don't really place the word of God, if you really not walking Him in truth, you leave yourself vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because the Bible says, carrying the appearance of godliness, but denying the power thereof. If Pastor was teaching on Thursday night that if you're spending your time doing other things, you can't come up in here and think you're just going to be able to deliver God to someone or do something for
Right.
God, or because you have yet left things open because you haven't filled your cup.
Right.
Your cup should be filled till it overflows, that when you come in here,
Come on,
someone
man.
else can get something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you have left yourself empty because you have denied yourself the presence of God, then if someone does come to you with a spirit, or if somebody does touch you, the door is wide open for them to come in
All right.
and leave, hallelujah, residue for you to fight with.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Verse number 4 says, "Oh, despisest thou the riches of his goodness and his forbearance and long suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leadeth to repentance."
Yeah.
It says in our commentary, if we label the inexcusable people of Romans as God deniers, then the inexcusable of chapter 2 would be the sin deniers. Being by seeing sinfulness in a comparative rather than absolute terms, they deny its consequences. Basically what the writer is saying here, he's saying that what we have a tendency to do is we have a tendency, because like I said, we spend so much time judging others and not addressing our own issue,
That's right.
that we think we can keep doing what we want to do and it's okay. God knows my heart. We say terms like that.
Yeah.
This is how God made me. God know what he dealing with.
Yeah.
Sin deniers. And when we become sin deniers, it's saying here that we basically are in a position of denying the consequences of sin.
Whoa.
You're denying what this word says.
That's right.
He said he will tell you, part from me, ye worker of iniquity, I know you not. What is the point? If we're not going to be in here to look in the mirror and do a reflection to change us. This walk is about you coming in here, doing what you need to do, and not always is your life about you.
Come on
Amen.
now. It is not.
Yes.
Come on. Wow.
See, the thing is you have to stand in the mirror to see the reflection of the sin and the iniquity that you were shaped in, that God may be able to begin to do a work to change that when you go out, the reflection that people see is Jesus.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah.
It's a transitioning. And we can't get there if we're not willing to be real.
Gotta be real.
Come on.
Gotta be real.
We have to be honest with ourselves. We know we do things.
That's right.
And like I said, 9 chances out of 10, it's stuff that's behind closed doors. It's the small foxes that spoil the vine.
That's right.
You may not be a murderer. You may not be an adulterer. You may not be a fornicator. Do you gossip? Do you backbite? Do you judge? We have to be real with ourselves.
Yes.
We're trying to walk. And it's talking about here that basically what verse 4 is saying, that when we do these things, we throw up in God's face his forbearance, his goodness, and his long suffering. Because God is long suffering with us, right?
Yes, he is.
He is long suffering with us.
Mm.
We know where we was, we know where we are, and we know where we got to get to, right? If we be real.
Be real.
And when you think about how long it took you to get from where you was to where you are, to where you know you need to be, and you gonna tell me God ain't long suffering? I know he is with me.
Yeah.
And how dare not throw that back in his face by sitting and judging another. Because if it were not for the grace of God, there go I.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Jesus.
Glory.
I have to put myself in that person's shoes to say that if I had not got the knowledge and gained the knowledge of who God really was, if I had continued to desire to walk in darkness and do the things of a sinful nature, I could be that person.
That's right.
That could be me right there.
You.
My
Hallelujah.
God.
God help them.
Yes.
Show them the light.
Come on now.
Send somebody to minister to them, God. Come on. God, give them the same hope that you gave me.
Yes.
I feel
That's
Lord.
That's my job.
Fantastic.
It is not my job to judge. People want to do things. We're born in sin. We're shaped in iniquity. Why are we so surprised and astonished when we see the sin nature of the flesh? It is what it
It
is.
is what it is.
That's what he said it would
That's what
be.
it be. Never no good thing in it.
But you have had a light bulb to come on.
Come on now.
Come on, turn it
There's a
on.
light on in you.
Hallelujah.
Keep it burning.
Thank you, Jesus.
It's a lot of times, there's a corner store by my house. And I go to this store all the time. And there are young men out there, and I know what they're doing. And, you know, they really look rough. And, you know, I'll see some people when they pull up, they looking at them. And, you know, they hurry up and they lock in their doors. It's judgment. Because you're already stereotyped.